The silence in St. Catherine's home for children hung heavy as a winter coat. Sister Agatha's finger pointed like a weapon at the small boy standing before her, his cheeks wet with tears, grey vest and pants hanging just a bit too large on his thin frame. "This is the third time this week, Timothy Farrell," Sister Agatha's voice echoed against the stone walls of the corridor. "Explain yourself." 8-year-old Timothy's lower lip trembled. His eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, darted briefly to the crucifix that hung on the wall behind the nun before dropping to the floor again. From the shadowed doorway of the girls' dormitory, Abigail Cortland watched, her fingers gripping the doorframe until her knuckles whitened. At 12 years old, she was 4 years Timothy's senior and felt a fierce protectiveness toward the boy who had arrived at the orphanage just 3 months earlier, hollow-cheeked and silent as a shadow. Timothy's voice cracked. "I just wanted to see if the birds had babies yet." "So you climbed the bell tower again, after being expressly forbidden?" Sister Agatha's voice rose, sharp as broken glass. "After morning prayers were already begun?" Sister Bernadette, the younger of the 2 nuns, covered her mouth with one hand, her eyes wide with what Abigail thought might be pity, but she said nothing to intercede. "The rules exist for your safety and for the glory of God," Sister Agatha continued. "Disobedience shows contempt for both." Abigail knew what would come next. 1 week of extra chores, no dessert, perhaps even the ruler across the palms. "Sister, please!" Abigail found herself stepping forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Timothy didn't mean any disrespect. He's just curious about God's creatures." "Isn't that a good thing?" Sister Agatha's head swiveled toward Abigail, her lips pinched into a bloodless line. "Miss Cortland, you were not invited into this discussion. But, Sister, since you seem so eager to join us, perhaps you'd like to share in Timothy's penance. Or has 4 years at St. Catherine's taught you nothing about speaking out of turn?" The other children had gathered now, a silent audience to the unfolding drama. Abigail felt their eyes on her, some sympathetic, others relieved. It wasn't them facing Sister Agatha's wrath. "I'll share his punishment," Abigail said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We're supposed to bear one another's burdens. That's in Galatians, Sister." A flush crept up Sister Agatha's neck. "You presume to quote scripture at me, child? Perhaps your heart needs more humility and less pride in your knowledge." "It's not pride," Abigail whispered. "It's what Father Donovan taught us last Sunday." Sister Bernadette made a small sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. "Both of you, to Mother Superior's office," Sister Agatha said, "immediately." As they walked the long corridor, Timothy's small hand slipped into Abigail's. "You didn't have to do that," he whispered. "Yes, I did," she answered, giving his fingers a gentle squeeze. "That's what family does." 15 years later, Abigail Cortland squinted up at the imposing brick building, shielding her eyes against the autumn sun. The sign that had once proclaimed it St. Catherine's Home for Children had long since been removed, leaving only faded patches on the weathered stone. The orphanage had closed 5 years ago, the building abandoned when funds ran dry, and the diocese consolidated its charitable operations. "What do you think?" Reverend Timothy Farrell asked, coming to stand beside her. At 23, he was tall and lean, with the same soulful eyes that had once brimmed with tears under Sister Agatha's scolding finger. Only now, those eyes held the calm confidence of a man who had found his calling. "It's bigger than I remembered," Abigail admitted, "and smaller too, somehow." Timothy chuckled. "That makes no sense." "Neither does coming back here after all these years," she replied, but there was no bitterness in her voice. "Yet, here we are." The real estate agent, a cheerful woman named Bethany Harlow, approached with a jingling ring of keys. "The diocese is very interested in your proposal, Miss Cortland. They're quite eager to see this property put to good use again." "I'm sure they are," Abigail murmured. She smoothed a hand over her simple blue dress, suddenly conscious of how different she must look from the scrawny girl who had last walked through these doors. At 27, She carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had fought hard for her place in the world. After aging out of St. Catherine's at 18, Abigail had worked her way through college with grim determination, earning a degree in social work. Then she'd spent 5 years in the trenches of the foster care system, witnessing firsthand how children continued to fall through the cracks. All the while, an idea had been forming, a vision born from the very pain she had experienced within these walls. "Shall we go inside?" Bethany asked, already moving toward the heavy oak doors. Timothy caught Abigail's elbow. "You don't have to do this today. We can come back when you're ready." "I've been ready for 15 years, she replied, and followed the agent inside. The entrance hall smelled of dust and abandonment. Sunlight filtered through grimy windows, illuminating dancing motes in slanted beams. Abigail's footsteps echoed on the marble floor as memories flooded back. Children lined up for morning inspection, the click of rosary beads, whispered prayers before bed. "The structure is sound," Bethany was saying, her voice bouncing off the high ceiling. "It would need updating, of course. New wiring, plumbing, that sort of thing. But the bones are good. Like most of us who came out of here," Timothy said softly. Abigail shot him a small smile. "Some better than others." They followed Bethany through the dining hall, past the classrooms, and up the grand staircase that had once seemed so imposing to small legs. Each space they entered unlocked another memory, some painful, others unexpectedly sweet. "And this was the chapel," Bethany announced, pushing open a set of double doors. Abigail's breath caught. Unlike the rest of the building, the chapel seemed untouched by time. Wooden pews stood in silent rows. Stained glass windows cast jewel-toned light across the altar, and there, hanging above it all, was the crucifix, the same one that had witnessed countless childish prayers, hopes, and tears. "Jesus," Timothy whispered, and it wasn't a curse but a greeting. Abigail moved slowly down the center aisle, her fingers trailing along the smooth wood of the pews. When she reached the front, she turned to look back at Timothy and Bethany. "This is where I first really prayed," she said. "Not the memorized prayers they taught us, but a real conversation with God. I was 13, and Sister Agatha had just told me I was too old to be adopted, that I should focus on preparing for a life of service instead." She shook her head. "I was so angry. I came in here and demanded to know why he'd abandoned me." "What happened?" Bethany asked. Nothing dramatic, no voice from heaven, just a feeling of not being alone anymore. Abigail smiled faintly. "That's when I started reading the Bible for myself, not just listening to what they told us it said. That changed everything." Timothy nodded. "For me, too, though I had help." He gave Abigail a meaningful look. Bethany glanced between them. "So, you're planning to reopen as a Christian orphanage?" "Not exactly," Abigail said, turning back to face the altar. "The Merciful Heart will be a community center and transitional home, part traditional orphanage for those who need it, but also offering support for fostering, adoption, family reunification where possible, and independent living preparation for older youth." She took a deep breath. "The system is broken. Children deserve better than what Timothy and I had." "And you have funding for all this?" Bethany asked, eyebrows raised. "We have a start," Timothy answered. "The church network I belong to has pledged support. Abigail's grant applications have been successful, and there's a donor who wishes to remain anonymous." Abigail thought of Gregory Whitcomb, the silver-haired venture capitalist whose wife had been orphaned as a child. His foundation had committed a substantial sum when he'd heard Abigail's pitch, enough to purchase the building and begin renovations. "We'll need more," she admitted, "but God provides." "In mysterious ways," Timothy added with a small smile. After touring the rest of the building, they stood once more in the entrance hall. Bethany excused herself to make a phone call, leaving Abigail and Timothy alone with the ghosts of their past. "I still can't believe we're doing this," Timothy said, "coming back to the place that—" He stopped short. "The place that hurt us," Abigail finished for him. "Or the place that shaped us?" "Both, I suppose." He gazed up at the ceiling, then back at her. Do you ever wonder what happened to them? Sister Agatha and the others. Before Abigail could answer, the heavy front door creaked open. A woman entered, blinking in the dimness of the hall. She was perhaps in her 60s, with silver-streaked hair and the sturdy build of someone who had spent a lifetime on her feet. Something about the set of her mouth tugged at Abigail's memory. "I'm sorry," the woman said, her voice hesitant. "The agent said the building was being shown today. I hoped—" She stopped abruptly, staring at them. Oh my! Recognition dawned slowly, then all at once. "Sister Bernadette?" Abigail whispered. The woman nodded, though she smiled at the name. "It's just Bernadette Sullivan now. Has been for almost 10 years. Her eyes moved from Abigail to Timothy, widening slightly. "Timothy Farrell and Abigail Cortland. My goodness, look at you both." Timothy recovered first, stepping forward with an outstretched hand. "It's Reverend Farrell these days, but please, it's still just Timothy." Bernadette took his hand in both of hers. "A minister? Well, the Lord does work in mysterious ways." Her eyes crinkled. "Though perhaps not so mysterious. You always had questions about faith that went deeper than catechism." She turned to Abigail. "And you? I heard you became a social worker." "You kept track of us?" Abigail asked, surprised. "Some of you. When I could." A shadow passed over Bernadette's face. "After I left the order, I tried to find out what had happened to the children I remembered most clearly. You two were among them." Abigail wasn't sure whether to be touched or disturbed. "Why are you here today?" "When I heard St. Catherine's might reopen, I wanted to see it, to—" Bernadette hesitated. "To make peace, perhaps." An uncomfortable silence fell. Abigail studied the woman before her, not the formidable figure of her childhood, but someone diminished by time, and perhaps regret. "Are you still in touch with any of the others?" Timothy asked. "Sister Agatha, Mother Superior?" "Mother passed away 5 years ago," Bernadette said. "As for Agatha," she sighed, "she's at St. Monica's retirement home. Her health is failing." Abigail felt a complicated knot of emotions tighten in her chest. The memory of Sister Agatha's harsh discipline remained sharp, but time had softened its edges. "You're buying this place?" Bernadette asked, glancing around the hall. "Both of you?" "Abigail is," Timothy said. "I'm just moral support and spiritual counsel." "And what will it become?" Abigail took a deep breath. "A new kind of home for children, one where they're seen as individuals, not just souls to be saved or problems to be managed." She met Bernadette's gaze directly. "One where they're loved first, disciplined second." Bernadette didn't flinch from the implied criticism. "That sounds healing." "That's the idea," Abigail said. Bethany returned then, breaking the tension. After awkward introductions, Bernadette made her excuses and prepared to leave. At the door, she paused. "Abigail," she called softly, "what you're doing, it matters. I hope you know that." After she'd gone, Bethany cleared her throat. "Well, shall we discuss the offer?" "Yes," Abigail said, her resolve hardening. "Let's make this happen." 6 months later, the renovation of St. Catherine's, now officially the Merciful Heart Community Centre, was well underway. Walls had been opened up to create brighter, more welcoming spaces. The dormitory-style bedrooms were being converted into smaller, family-like units. The institutional kitchen had been modernized, and the chapel was being preserved but reimagined as a multi-faith contemplative space. Abigail stood in what would become her office, watching workers install new windows. The April morning was cool but sunny, promising spring's renewal after a long winter. "Coffee?" Timothy appeared in the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups. "Bless you," Abigail said, accepting one gratefully. He leaned against the doorframe. "Contractor says we're on schedule for a September opening. Just in time for the school year. Speaking of which, have you hired a teacher yet?" Abigail sighed. "Still interviewing. The right person hasn't come along." She took a sip of coffee. "Someone who understands these kids. Who sees them? You'll find them, Timothy assured her. Or they'll find you. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Voices raised, then a loud crash. Abigail set down her coffee and hurried out, Timothy close behind. In the main corridor, a worker was helping an elderly woman to her feet. A walker lay overturned nearby, and a small suitcase had spilled its contents across the dusty floor. I'm fine, the woman was insisting, though her voice trembled. Just clumsy. Abigail froze mid-step. Though the years had bent her spine and whitened her hair, there was no mistaking Sister Agatha's imperious profile. Timothy recovered first. Here, let me help you. He righted the walker and steadied the old woman with a gentle hand on her elbow. Are you hurt? Sister Agatha looked up, squinting. No, young man, just my pride. Thank you. Her gaze shifted to Abigail, and confusion crossed her face. Do I know you? Abigail stepped forward, her heart pounding. Sister Agatha, it's Abigail Cortland, from St. Catherine's. Recognition dawned slowly in the old woman's rheumy eyes. Abigail, the girl with all the questions. That's me, Abigail said softly, and this is Timothy Farrell. Sister Agatha peered at Timothy. The bird watcher, the one who was always climbing where he shouldn't? A smile tugged at Timothy's mouth. Guilty as charged, sister. What are you doing here? Abigail asked, helping the worker gather the scattered belongings. How did you even know about the renovation? Bernadette, Sister Agatha said, as if that explained everything. She straightened as much as her curved spine would allow. I came to see for myself, and to offer my services. Abigail nearly dropped the nightgown she was folding. Your services? I may be old, but I'm not useless. Sister Agatha sniffed. I can still read a story, knit a sweater, listen to a prayer. Her voice softened, revealing a vulnerability Abigail had never before witnessed. I've had a lot of time to think at St. Monica's, about what we did right at St. Catherine's, and what we did wrong. Abigail exchanged a glance with Timothy, who looked as stunned as she felt. Sister, I'm not a sister anymore, the old woman interrupted. Just Agatha Mills now. Left the order 8 years ago. A thin smile. Turns out even old dogs can learn new tricks. Miss Mills, Abigail began again, then stopped, unsure what to say. This was not a scenario she had envisioned when planning the Merciful Heart. You don't have to decide now, Agatha said, but I'd like to help, to make amends, if I can. Timothy stepped in smoothly. Why don't we continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable? There's a cafe down the street. While Timothy escorted Agatha outside, Abigail took a moment to collect herself. The appearance of her childhood nemesis, the woman whose strict discipline had once seemed like cruelty to a young girl's heart, had thrown her completely off balance. By the time she joined them at Rosemary's Cafe, they were already deep in conversation. Agatha was sipping tea, while Timothy listened intently, his expression thoughtful. Never meant to be unkind, Agatha was saying as Abigail slid into the booth. We truly believed discipline was kindness. That structure was mercy. She shook her head. The road to hell and all that. Yet you stayed for decades, Abigail pointed out, more sharply than she'd intended. Agatha's gaze met hers directly. Yes, and I won't pretend it was all misguided. We gave you safety, education, stability. Many of you went on to good lives. In spite of, not because of some of your methods, Abigail countered. Perhaps. Agatha set down her teacup. But I didn't come to defend the past, Abigail. I came because Bernadette told me what you're trying to create, something better than what we offered. Her voice dropped. I'd like to be part of that, even in some small way. Abigail felt the weight of Timothy's gaze. She knew what he would say if asked. That forgiveness was at the heart of their faith, that redemption was possible for everyone. But theory was easier than practice when faced with the architect of so many childhood tears. Why now? She asked. Why this project? Agatha was silent for a long moment. Do you remember Lucille Warren? Abigail nodded. Lucille had been 3 years older than her, a rebellious girl who'd run away from St. Catherine's repeatedly. She died last year, Agatha said. Overdose. I attended her funeral. There was hardly anyone there. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her tea again. It made me wonder how many others we lost because we failed to truly see them, to love them as Christ would have. The raw pain in the old woman's voice caught Abigail off guard. For the first time, she saw Sister Agatha as fully human, fallible, capable of regret. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked finally. "I thought perhaps I could volunteer. Read to the younger children, help with homework, whatever you need that these old bones can manage." Agatha attempted a smile. "And I promise not to ruler anyone's knuckles." Timothy chuckled, breaking the tension. "That's a relief." Abigail wasn't ready to laugh about it. "I'll need to think about this," she said honestly. "The merciful heart is meant to be a place of healing. Having you there might be complicated for some of the staff who were once under your care." Agatha nodded. "I understand. Take all the time you need." She reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope, sliding it across the table. "In the meantime, perhaps this will help your work." Abigail opened the envelope and gasped softly. Inside was a check for $25,000. "My life savings," Agatha explained. "Not much to show for 73 years, but St. Monica's provides for my needs now. I'd rather see this put to good use while I can still witness it." "We can't accept this," Abigail began. "You can and you will," Agatha said firmly, a flash of her old authority returning. "Consider it restitution, if that makes it easier." The three finished their drinks in thoughtful silence. As they prepared to leave, Agatha reached for Abigail's hand. "I was hardest on you because I saw myself in you," she said quietly. "The questions, the fierce protection of others, the certainty that you knew better than those in authority." A rueful smile touched her lips. "I feared you would make my mistakes. Instead, you're correcting them." Abigail felt something tight within her chest begin to loosen. "I'll call you next week," she promised. "We'll talk more about how you might help." As they watched Agatha's taxi pull away, Timothy bumped Abigail's shoulder gently with his own. "Well, that was unexpected." "To put it mildly," she agreed. "Did you ever imagine Sister Agatha would be asking us for forgiveness? God's grace is full of surprises." He turned to face her fully. "You don't have to decide anything today. But remember what Father Donovan used to say. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past," Abigail quoted from memory. "It's about creating a different future." Timothy smiled. "Exactly." The next 3 months passed in a blur of decisions, setbacks, and small victories. Funding challenges arose and were overcome. Staffing fell into place, a mix of professionals with the right credentials and people with lived experience in the system. The community responded with unexpected enthusiasm, donating furniture, books, and time. Agatha became a regular fixture at the renovation site, offering opinions whether asked for or not. Abigail found herself first tolerating, then grudgingly appreciating, then actually seeking the older woman's perspective. Their shared history gave them a shorthand that proved useful in planning. It was Agatha who suggested reaching out to other former residents of St. Catherine's, creating a network of alumni who might support the new venture. And it was through this outreach that Abigail found herself sitting across from Wesley Thornton, now a successful pediatrician with a thriving practice in the suburbs. "I never thought I'd set foot in this building again," Wesley admitted, looking around the newly renovated common room. At 42, he was one of the older former residents Abigail had tracked down. "It looks different. Feels different too," Abigail said. "At least I hope it does." Wesley nodded. "You know, I used to dream about buying this place and turning it into a parking lot." Abigail laughed. "Believe me, I understand the impulse. But what you're doing," he shook his head in admiration, "it's better. Healing the wound instead of covering it up. That's the goal." Abigail hesitated, then pressed forward. "Actually, that's why I asked you here today. We're still looking for a pediatrician to provide on-site care for our residents." Maybe a half-day clinic once a week to start. Wesley's eyebrows rose. You want me? Even knowing my history with this place. Especially knowing your history, Abigail corrected. Who better to treat these kids than someone who's walked in their shoes? A slow smile spread across Wesley's face. Let me talk to my partners. I think we could work something out. One by one, pieces fell into place. Bernadette Sullivan came aboard as a part-time counselor, bringing with her a master's degree in psychology she'd earned after leaving the order. Timothy's church youth group volunteered to create a welcoming mural in the entrance hall. Even Agatha found her niche, establishing a reading corner in the library and starting a knitting circle for the older girls. The night before the official opening, Abigail found herself alone in the chapel. The stained glass windows had been cleaned and repaired, casting vibrant patterns across the polished floor in the setting sun. The crucifix still hung on the wall, a reminder of suffering transformed into salvation. She sat in the front pew, overwhelmed by how far they had come and how much still lay ahead. 28 children would move in tomorrow, ranging in age from 3 to 17. Some were siblings, keeping their family bonds intact. Others were individual souls adrift in the system. All would need more than just a roof and meals. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Agatha made her slow way down the aisle, her walker thumping softly against the carpet runner. "May I join you?" she asked. Abigail nodded, shifting to make room on the pew. Agatha lowered herself carefully, sighing as her joints protested. "Bernadette said I'd find you here. Just having a quiet moment before the chaos begins." "Wise." Agatha gazed up at the crucifix. "You've done something remarkable, Abigail. I want you to know that." "We've done it," Abigail corrected. "All of us." They sat in companionable silence as the light shifted and faded. Finally, Agatha spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about mercy lately, how it differs from forgiveness." Abigail turned to look at her. "How so?" "Forgiveness can be transactional. You wrong me, I forgive you. The slate is clean." Agatha's gnarled hands twisted in her lap. "But mercy is generative. It creates something new from the broken pieces." "Like this place," Abigail murmured. "Yes, the merciful heart." Agatha smiled faintly. "A perfect name." Abigail found herself reaching for the old woman's hand. "You know, when I first came back here, all I could see were the wounds of the past. I wanted to reclaim this space to prove something." She shook her head. "But it's become more than that." "What has it become?" "A testimony," Abigail said simply, "to the fact that God can use even our deepest hurts to create something beautiful. That pain doesn't have to be the end of the story." Agatha's eyes glistened in the dimming light. "Amen to that." Opening day dawned bright and clear, as if God himself had ordered perfect weather for the occasion. The front lawn of the Merciful Heart was decorated with balloons and a large banner. Local news crews set up cameras. A small crowd gathered, waiting for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Inside, Abigail paced nervously, checking and rechecking details. Each bedroom was ready, personalized with touches for its new occupant based on caseworker notes. The kitchen was stocked. Staff stood ready to welcome their charges. "Breathe," Timothy advised, appearing at her side in his clerical collar. "Everything is ready." "What if it's not enough?" Abigail asked. "What if we can't really make a difference?" "We already have." He nodded toward the window, where Agatha could be seen greeting Bernadette and Wesley. "And we'll keep doing it, one child at a time." A car pulled into the driveway, the first of many that would arrive that day, bringing children to their new temporary home. Abigail squared her shoulders and moved toward the door. The first to enter was a solemn-faced boy of about 8, clutching a battered backpack to his chest. His social worker introduced him as Peter, adding in a low voice that he hadn't spoken since being removed from his home 3 weeks earlier. Abigail knelt to meet his eyes. "Hello, Peter, I'm Abigail. This is going to be your home for a while, and I want you to know that you're safe here." She smiled gently. "Would you like to see your room? We put up some space posters because your social worker said you like planets. A tiny flicker of interest crossed the boy's face. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. Great. And after that, if you want, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Her name is Agatha, and she knows all about the stars. As she led Peter down the hallway that had once echoed with her own childish footsteps, Abigail felt a profound sense of rightness. The past had not been erased. Its lessons and scars remained, but it had been redeemed, transformed by mercy into something new and hopeful. By evening, all 28 children had arrived. They gathered in the dining hall for their first meal together, a chaotic, noisy affair full of uncertain glances and cautious exploration. Abigail stood at the head of the main table, surveying the scene with a full heart. Timothy appeared at her side, customary cup of coffee in hand. "So," he said quietly, "worth it." Abigail watched as Agatha patiently showed a young girl how to fold her napkin into a swan. Nearby, Wesley was examining a small boy's scraped knee while keeping up a stream of gentle banter that had the child giggling. Bernadette moved among the tables, learning names and favorite colors and food preferences. "More than worth it," Abigail replied. "This is just the beginning." When the meal ended, Abigail struck a small bell for attention. The room gradually quieted. "Welcome to the Merciful Heart," she said, her voice steady and warm. "Before we end our first evening together, I'd like to share something with you. When I was a child, I lived in this building when it was called St. Catherine's. Like many of you, I didn't have a family to go home to. I was angry about that for a long time." She paused, meeting the eyes of those children old enough to understand. "But I learned something important here, something I hope you'll discover too. Family isn't just about who shares your blood. It's about who shares your journey, who sees your worth, who believes in your future, even when you can't." Abigail gestured to the adults around the room. Staff members, volunteers, and the 3 people who had once represented everything she'd wanted to escape. "All of us here believe in you, and we're going to be your family for as long as you need us." A small hand went up at one of the tables. It belonged to Peter, the silent boy who'd arrived first. "Yes, Peter?" Abigail said, surprised. "Does that mean—" His voice was rough from disuse. "Does that mean you were an orphan too?" Abigail's throat tightened. "Yes, I was." Peter's next question came in a whisper that somehow carried through the hushed room. "And you turned out okay?" A ripple of knowing chuckles passed among the adults. Abigail smiled, blinking back sudden tears. "Yes, Peter, I turned out okay. Better than okay." She looked around the room at the faces, young and old, that now constituted her unexpected, miraculous family. "And so will you. I promise." Later, after the children were settled in their rooms and the day's excitement had faded to quiet, Abigail found herself once more in the chapel. She wasn't alone. Agatha, Bernadette, Wesley, and Timothy sat scattered among the pews, each absorbed in private reflection. Abigail slipped into a seat beside Timothy. "Quite a day," she murmured. "Just the first of many," he replied. From the back of the chapel, a soft, wavering voice began to sing an old hymn. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." Bernadette joined in, then Wesley. Timothy's rich baritone added depth. Abigail found her own voice rising to blend with theirs. As they sang together in the gentle darkness, former orphan and former nun, doctor and minister and social worker, wounded healers all, Abigail felt the circle closing. The past, with its pain, had not been forgotten, but its sharp edges had been softened by something stronger. Mercy, flowing from heart to heart, creating something new from what had been broken. "I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." The final notes hung in the air like a promise. Outside, the Merciful Heart sheltered 28 children beginning new chapters in their stories. And inside its walls, 5 adults who had once been separated by hurt and misunderstanding found themselves united in a common purpose. to ensure that those stories would be written with more love than they themselves had known. It was, Abigail thought, exactly as it should be. Not perfect, not finished, but faithful. And in the faithfulness, there was healing for them all. The end.